X found my secret blog where I shared personal stories. Now he's telling mutual friends and family that I was unfaithful during our relationship because I mentioned intimacy with my now boyfriend that happened long after we'd broken up. Hello everyone. My name is Maya. I'm 29 years old. And today I'm going to tell you about how my vindictive ex-boyfriend found my anonymous blog where I wrote about my personal experiences and is now deliberately twisting my words too. Falsely accused me of cheating on him years ago. This is a story about privacy invasion, malicious lies, the weaponization of someone's personal writing, and the disturbing reality that some people will do anything to destroy your reputation when they can't control you anymore. I never imagined that my private creative outlet would be discovered and used against me in such a calculated and damaging way, but here we are. And I'm fighting to defend myself against accusations that anyone with basic reading comprehension would know are completely false. Let me start by explaining the background of my relationship with my ex, Derek, and why I started the blog in the first place. Derek and I dated for 3 years, from when I was 22 to 25. The relationship was intense and ultimately toxic in ways I didn't fully recognize until after it ended. Derek was controlling, jealous, and had an explosive temper that made me feel like I was constantly walking on eggshells. He would go through my phone, question me about where I'd been and who I'd talked to, make scenes if other men even looked at me, and isolate me from friends he deemed threatening. At the time, I rationalized his behavior as passion or protectiveness. But looking back, I can see clearly that it was abuse. Emotional manipulation designed to keep me under his control. The breakup happened 3 years ago, when I finally gathered the courage to end things after Derek threw a tantrum at a party because I was talking to a male co-worker. He screamed at me in front of everyone, called me horrible names, and when we got home he punched a hole in the wall next to my head. That moment of violence, even though it wasn't directed at my body, was my wake-up call. I broke up with him the next day, and despite his attempts to apologize and promise he'd change, I held firm. The breakup was messy, with Derek alternating between begging me to come back and sending me angry messages about how I'd regret leaving him, how no one else would ever love me, how I was making the biggest mistake of my life. After the breakup, I struggled significantly with my mental health. I had anxiety, trust issues, and felt like I needed to process everything that had happened in that relationship to move forward. That's when I started the blog. I created it on a platform where I could write anonymously, using a pseudonym and not including any identifying information about myself or anyone I wrote about. The blog was titled Reclaiming My Story, and it was essentially my personal journal made public but anonymized. A place where I could write about my experiences, my healing journey, my thoughts and feelings as I worked through the aftermath of my toxic relationship. I wrote about the red flags I missed with Derek, the ways he controlled me, the process of recognizing abuse and extracting myself from it. I wrote about therapy and what I was learning about myself. I wrote about dating again after leaving Derek, about learning to trust, about the fears and insecurities that came with opening myself up to someone new. The blog became a creative and therapeutic outlet, and to my surprise, it gained a small following of people who related to my experiences, who left supportive comments, who shared their own stories of surviving toxic relationships. It felt empowering to turn my pain into something that might help others feel less alone. About a year after my breakup with Derek, I met my current boyfriend, James. James is everything Derek wasn't: kind, patient, respectful, secure in himself and in our relationship. Building a relationship with James after the trauma of being with Derek was challenging, and I wrote about that journey on my blog. I wrote about my fears of intimacy after being controlled for so long, about learning to be vulnerable again, about the difference between Derek's possessive jealousy and James's healthy trust. I wrote detailed posts about milestones in my relationship with James, including when we first became intimate about 6 months into dating, which was a big deal for me emotionally given my history. In all of my blog posts, I was careful never to use real names or identifying details. I referred to Derek as my ex-Ori and to James as Jay or my partner. I didn't mention the city where I lived, where I worked, or anything specific that could connect the blog to my real identity. The blog was my anonymous safe space, and I thought I had protected my privacy adequately. What I didn't account for was how obsessive Derek could be, or how much effort he would put into finding information about me even years after our relationship ended, apparently. Derek had been cyber-stalking me for the past 3 years. According to what I've pieced together from various sources, he had been monitoring my social media despite me blocking him, using fake accounts and probably getting information from mutual acquaintances. He had been looking for any trace of me online, any opening to insert himself back into my life or to gather information about what I was doing and who I was with. Somehow, through methods I still don't fully understand, but that my tech-savvy friends tell me probably involved searching for specific phrases or writing patterns. Derek found my anonymous blog. I don't know exactly when Derek discovered the blog, but I believe it was several months ago based on the timeline of what followed. He apparently read through all of my posts, hundreds of entries spanning 3 years, documenting my healing journey and my relationship with James. Then, about 6 weeks ago, Derek began his campaign of destruction using my own words as weapons, deliberately twisting them to create a false narrative that I had cheated on him during our relationship. The way Derek is misrepresenting my blog is both calculated and absurd. I have posts from about a year after our breakup where I wrote about becoming intimate with James for the first time. Posts where I reflected on how different physical intimacy felt in a healthy relationship compared to what I experienced with Derek. These posts are clearly dated, clearly contextualized within my relationship with James that began a full year after Derek and I broke up, and clearly part of my healing narrative about learning to trust again after abuse. But Derek is taking these posts and claiming they're proof that I was sleeping with James while I was still with Derek, that I was having an affair the entire time we were together, and that everything about our relationship was a lie. The accusations are so ridiculous that anyone who actually reads my blog with basic comprehension would immediately see they're false. The timeline is crystal clear. My posts about breaking up with Derek are dated. My posts about being single and healing are dated. My posts about meeting James and starting to date him are dated a full year later. My posts about becoming intimate with James come 6 months after I started dating him, which was 18 months after my breakup with Derek. There is literally no way to read my blog honestly and come to the conclusion that I cheated on Derek unless you're deliberately misreading and misrepresenting the content, which is exactly what Derek is doing. But Derek isn't just making these accusations to me privately. He's launched a full-scale smear campaign, contacting mutual friends, former co-workers, even members of my family, sending them links to specific blog posts along with his false interpretation. He's created this whole narrative where he's the victim, the betrayed boyfriend who was cheated on throughout our relationship. And my blog is his proof. He's telling people that I wrote about my affair in detail, that I confessed to everything publicly thinking he'd never find it. And now I'm trying to cover it up by claiming the timeline is different than it actually is. The impact of Derek's lies has been devastating. Some mutual friends who don't know me as well have actually believed him, at least initially. They've stopped talking to me, unfriended me on social media, and apparently are spreading the story further within our social circles. Some of Derek's friends, who never liked me anyway, have jumped on this enthusiastically, leaving cruel comments on my social media, calling me a cheater and a liar, saying I got what I deserved. Even some of my own family members, who Derek contacted directly, have called me confused and hurt, asking why I would cheat and write about it publicly, forcing me to explain the entire situation and prove the timeline to them. The whole thing has been absolutely insane because the truth is so easy to verify. Anyone who actually looks at my blog can see the dates on the posts. Anyone who knows the actual timeline of my relationships can confirm that I met James a year after breaking up with Derek. James and I have dated for 2 years now, and we have mutual friends who can attest to when we got together and that it was long after Derek was out of my life. But Derek is counting on the fact that most people won't actually investigate, that they'll just believe his dramatic claims and his emotional performance as the wronged ex-boyfriend, especially because he's framing himself as the victim who just discovered this devastating truth. I've tried multiple approaches to address Derek's lies. Initially, I tried responding directly to people he contacted, explaining the actual timeline and offering to show them the blog with dates clearly visible. This worked with people who actually knew me well and were willing to listen. My close friends immediately saw through Derek's lies, and several of them have been actively defending me in social circles and on social media. My family, once they understood the situation, were horrified by Derek's behavior and have been supportive. James has been absolutely incredible throughout this, never once doubting me, standing by me publicly, and even confronting Derek directly to tell him to stop spreading lies. But there's a segment of people, acquaintances and those who don't know me well, who seem more interested in the drama than in the truth. They want to believe the scandal, want to participate in the gossip, and aren't interested in looking at evidence that would disprove the exciting story Derek is telling. I've watched in real time as the false narrative spread through social media, with people I barely know sharing posts about me being a cheater, commenting on old photos of Derek and me with sympathetic messages to him about how strong he is for surviving my betrayal. I consulted with a lawyer about whether I have any legal recourse against Derek for defamation. The lawyer explained that I do have a case since Derek is making false statements about me that are damaging my reputation, but that defamation cases are expensive, time-consuming, and difficult to win. The lawyer also pointed out that pursuing legal action might paradoxically give Derek's lies more attention and make more people aware of the situation. We discussed the possibility of sending Derek a cease and desist letter, which might scare him into stopping without a full lawsuit. But even that could potentially escalate things further. I've also had to make the difficult decision to delete my blog entirely. Even though the blog was my safe space, my creative outlet, and had a community of readers who found value in it, Derek's discovery of it and weaponization of my words made it impossible to continue. I couldn't keep writing knowing Derek was reading everything, analyzing my words for ammunition he could use against me. I couldn't keep the blog up knowing he was sending links to people and misrepresenting the content. So I deleted 3 years of writing, hundreds of posts documenting my healing and growth, all because Derek couldn't accept that I moved on and found happiness without him. The deletion of the blog has actually made things worse in some ways because now Derek is claiming I deleted it to hide evidence of my cheating, that I'm trying to cover up my confession by removing the posts. He apparently downloaded or screenshot parts of my blog before I deleted it, and he's been selectively sharing those screenshots without the context of dates or surrounding posts, making it easier to misrepresent what I wrote. It's a no-win situation where anything I do to protect myself is twisted into further evidence of guilt. What's been particularly painful is seeing how effective Derek's manipulation has been with some people. His ability to take my words, strip them of context, and create a completely false narrative shows the same manipulative skills he used during our relationship to control me and make me doubt my own reality. He's gaslighting not just me, but everyone in our social circle, and some people are falling for it. I've had conversations with people who claim to be neutral, who say they're not taking sides, but who clearly have doubts about my version of events because Derek has been so convincing in his lies. The fact that they're even entertaining the possibility that I cheated, when the evidence clearly shows I didn't, is its own kind of betrayal. I've also struggled with feelings of violation and regret about the blog itself. That blog was my private creative space, even though it was technically public. I never imagined anyone from my real life would find it, certainly never imagined my abusive ex would discover it and weaponize my vulnerability against me. I've questioned whether I should have written so openly about my experiences, whether I should have been more careful about privacy, whether sharing my story was worth this nightmare. My therapist has helped me work through these feelings, reminding me that I did nothing wrong by processing my experiences through writing, that the violation is entirely Derek's fault, not mine, and that I shouldn't let his abuse tactics make me regret my healing journey. The most frustrating aspect of all this is that Derek is getting exactly what he wants from this situation. He wants to hurt me, to punish me for leaving him and moving on, to disrupt my current relationship and damage my reputation. Even though his accusations are completely false, he's succeeding in causing chaos in my life, making me stressed and anxious, forcing me to constantly defend myself and prove my innocence. He's inserted himself back into my life in a destructive way, making himself relevant again when I had finally healed and moved forward. It's a form of continued abuse, using different tactics than he used when we were together, but with the same goal of control and harm. James and I have discussed how to handle this as a couple, how to protect our relationship from Derek's attempts to destroy it. James has been unbelievably supportive, never once believing Derek's lies or questioning my faithfulness. He's seen firsthand how Derek's accusations don't align with the actual timeline of our relationship, and he understands that this is about Derek's inability to let go rather than any actual wrongdoing on my part. But the situation has still been stressful for both of us, dealing with the social fallout, fielding questions from people, and knowing that Derek is out there actively trying to ruin what we've built together. We've decided to take a proactive approach to combating Derek's lies. We've created a detailed timeline of events with dates, including when Derek and I broke up, when James and I met and started dating, and when the blog posts in question were actually written. We've shared this timeline with anyone who asks, along with offering to show them the actual blog posts with dates if they want to verify the truth for themselves. We've also been open about Derek's history of controlling behavior and emotional abuse during our relationship, providing context for why he might be doing this now. Most reasonable people, when presented with this information, have seen through Derek's lies and been supportive. I've also reached out to the platform where my blog was hosted before I deleted it, explaining the situation and asking if they have any policies or procedures for dealing with content being misrepresented to harass someone. Unfortunately, since I deleted the blog myself, there's not much they can do now, but they did provide me with documentation showing the original publication dates of all my posts, which serves as additional proof that Derek's timeline is false. I've saved this documentation along with screenshots I had taken of various blog posts over the years, creating my own archive of evidence in case I need it for legal purposes. The experience has taught me some hard lessons about privacy in the digital age and about the lengths some people will go to when they're motivated by spite and obsession. I thought that by using a pseudonym and not including identifying information, I had adequately protected my privacy. But I underestimated how much someone who was determined to find me would be willing to search, and how technology makes it possible to connect seemingly anonymous content to real identities. I've since learned about better privacy practices, about being even more careful with what I share online even anonymously, and about the reality that anything posted on the internet, even on anonymous platforms, can potentially be traced back to you. I've also learned that some people will believe lies regardless of evidence, especially when the lies are dramatic and scandalous. Derek's false accusations have more entertainment value than the boring truth, which is simply that I left a toxic relationship, healed, met someone new, and moved on with my life. The narrative of the cheating girlfriend who confessed her affair in a public blog is more interesting than the reality of a woman processing trauma and building a healthy relationship years after leaving her abuser. And some people are more interested in being entertained than in pursuing truth. Looking forward, I'm trying to focus on the people who have stood by me, who believed me without hesitation, who saw through Derek's manipulation immediately. My close friends, my family, James, and even some acquaintances I didn't know well have been incredibly supportive, actively defending me in social situations and online, calling out Derek's lies when they see them spreading. These people have shown me who my real community is, who actually cares about truth and about me as a person, in a strange way. Derek's malicious behavior has helped me identify who in my life is actually worth maintaining relationships with. I've also had to accept that some relationships have been damaged or lost because of Derek's lies, and that there may be people who will always believe his false narrative no matter what evidence I present. That's painful, but it's also freeing in a way. I don't want people in my life who are willing to believe I'm a cheater based on a vindictive ex's deliberate misrepresentation of my own writing. If they can't be bothered to look at dates or ask me for my side of the story before judging me, they're not people I want in my inner circle anyway. As for Derek, I've accepted that he's not going to stop his campaign of lies on his own. People like Derek, who are driven by the need to control and punish, don't respond to reason or evidence. They're playing a different game, one where truth doesn't matter and hurting their target is the only goal. I'm currently in the process of documenting every instance of Derek contacting people about me, every false statement he's made, every piece of harassment, building a file in case I decide to pursue a restraining order or a defamation lawsuit. My lawyer has advised that having thorough documentation will be crucial if I choose to take legal action, and even if I don't. It's important to have a record of his behavior. I'm also being extremely vigilant about my online presence and privacy now. I've locked down all my social media accounts, removed or made private anything that Derek could potentially access or misrepresent. I've set up alerts to notify me if my name appears online so I can monitor whether Derek is posting about me on other platforms. I've educated myself about digital security and privacy, taking steps I should have taken years ago to protect my information. It's exhausting to have to think about these things, to have to guard against someone who should have been out of my life 3 years ago. But it's necessary given Derek's obsessive behavior. The silver lining in this nightmare, if there is one, is that it's reinforced how much I've grown since leaving Derek and how healthy my relationship with James is in comparison. James's response to this situation, his unwavering support and trust, has shown me what a real partnership looks like. We've handled this crisis together, communicating openly, supporting each other, and presenting a united front against Derek's attempts to tear us apart. In a twisted way, Derek's lies have actually strengthened my relationship with James by forcing us to work through a challenge together and proving to both of us that our foundation is solid enough to weather external attacks. I'm also finding ways to reclaim my voice and my story that Derek tried to steal from me. I'm considering starting a new blog, this time with even more stringent privacy protections, where I can write about this experience and continue my healing journey. I'm thinking about speaking more openly in my real life, using my actual identity, about surviving an abusive relationship and dealing with continued harassment from an ex, hoping that my story might help others recognize similar patterns or give them courage to stand up to their own abusers. Derek tried to weaponize my words, but I can choose to use my voice even more powerfully in response. My name is Maya, I'm 29 years old, and this is my story of how my abusive ex-boyfriend found my anonymous blog where I documented my healing journey and is now deliberately misrepresenting my words to falsely accuse me of cheating on him years ago. His lies have caused real damage to my reputation and relationships, but they've also revealed who my true support system is and strengthened my resolve to never let him control or silence me again. I'm still fighting to defend my truth against his lies, still dealing with the fallout of his harassment, but I'm not backing down. Derek spent years trying to control me when we were together, and he's trying to control the narrative about me now, but I won't let him win. My story is mine to tell, and no amount of manipulation from him will change the truth of what actually happened. Thank you for listening to my story.